We use the word love for almost everything in our modern vocabulary. We love our partners, we love our dogs, we love our favorite sports teams, and we certainly love a good slice of pizza. But when we look at the wreckage of human history, the heartbreaks, the broken homes, the wars, and the crushing possessiveness that often passes for passion, we have to stop and ask, what exactly is this thing? Is love just a blind, irrational impulse? Is it a chemical surge that bypasses our brains? Or is it something smarter? Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into Martha Nussbaum's landmark work, Upheavals of Thought, The Intelligence of Emotions. We're going to explore her thesis that emotions aren't just feelings that happen to us in the dark, they are cognitive-evaluative appraisals. Drawing on Neo-Stoic logic and the Aristotelian tradition, Nussbaum argues that emotions are actually judgments about the world. They have objects, they have beliefs attached to them, and they carry a value that we assign to things outside of our control. But if love is a judgment, what exactly is it judging? And more importantly, how can we move from a narcissistic, infantile love that seeks to control everything to a mature love that actually makes the world and our own lives better?
Nussbaum argues that love and compassion are not just sentimental additions to a life of reason. They are necessary elements in what Aristotle called eudaimonia, the good life. She provides three primary reasons for this. First, emotions are inherently judgments. When you feel love, you aren't just vibrating, you are making a claim about the value of the person you love. Second, emotions draw our attention to particular elements in the world that are morally relevant. They act like a spotlight, highlighting the needs and joys of others that our cold logic might overlook. And third, perhaps most importantly, emotions point to our inherent limitations. We are spatio-temporal beings. We are not gods. We have essential needs, vulnerabilities, and interdependencies. Love is the bridge that acknowledges these facts. According to Nussbaum, mature love isn't just a feeling, it's a structure that rests on three distinct pillars: compassion, reciprocity, and individuality.
Let's start with our first pillar, compassion. For many, compassion is just pity, but Nussbaum gives us a rigorous three-part framework to determine if our compassion is logically sound. In her own words, compassion then has three cognitive elements: the judgment of size, a serious bad event has befallen someone; the judgment of non-desert, this person did not bring the suffering on himself or herself; and the eudaimonistic judgment, this person or creature is a significant element in my scheme of goals and projects, an end whose good is to be promoted. Think about the mental work happening there. For you to feel true compassion, you have to decide if the harm is serious enough. You have to evaluate desert. Did they bring this on themselves? And finally, you have to make a eudaimonistic judgment. Is this person part of my circle of concern? This is where your personal philosophy comes into play. If your background theory of free will is extremely harsh, you might never see a lack of moral responsibility in others, and thus your compassion will be stifled. If who you think qualifies as a proper member of the moral community is narrow, perhaps restricted only to your own family or nation, you will be blind to the suffering of the other. Nussbaum wants us to expand these bounds, to see all humans as rational, social, meaning-seeking animals who all share the same basic needs for food, for health, and for social relationships.
The second pillar is reciprocity. This is the ultimate antidote to the possessive model of love that treats people like property. Nussbaum writes, reciprocity. The view of love should make room for and support reciprocal relationships with people who treat one another not just as things, but as agents and as ends, and in which they respond to one another with the subtle interplay described by Winnicott. If men are encouraged by a normative picture of love to think of women as objects for their use and control, this is not likely to encourage reciprocal relationships between men and women in social and political life. Love gives us understandings of value that we then translate into other spheres. This is a profound warning. If your love is focused on possession, if you think of your partner as a trophy to boost your status, you aren't just failing in your relationship, you are damaging your ability to function in a just society. Mature love requires what psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott called subtle interplay. It requires you to respect the other person as an agent with their own power, even when that power leads them away from your immediate control. It's about give and take. Love at its best is reciprocal, not possessive. It respects the dignity of the other as an end in themselves.
The final pillar is individuality. Nussbaum defines this through two lenses: separateness and qualitative distinctness. She explains this with an almost startling clarity. One aspect of individuality is separateness. By this I mean that people have distinct bodies and lives that are their own to live. The food given to A does not miraculously arrive in the stomach of B. The satisfaction of D does not remove or balance out the misery of C. A second aspect of individuality is qualitative distinctness. All people have distinct properties, their own distinct talents and tastes, projects and plans, flaws and virtues. However similar people are, the fact that each has just one life to live is a very salient ethical fact. Maturity, for Nussbaum, is the difficult process of overcoming the infantile and narcissistic desire for omnipotent control. When we're infants, we want the world to be an extension of ourselves. But as we grow, we must realize that the person we love is a separate agent. They have their own projects that have nothing to do with us. They have flaws we cannot fix. Understanding this fact of separateness is what allows us to form social relationships of true care rather than manipulation.
It is fascinating to contrast this with the great scholastic philosopher, St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas famously defined love in the Summa Theologiae quite simply. To love is to will the good of another. While Nussbaum focuses on managing our shared vulnerabilities and the upheavals of our needs, Aquinas focuses on advancing the perfectibility of the person according to their nature. In a sense, they are two sides of the same Neo-Aristotelian coin. Nussbaum gives us the map of our imperfections and the need for compassion. Aquinas gives us the goal of the relationship, the actual flourishing and good of the beloved. If you take nothing else away from this video, I want you to remember this definition. It's a synthesis of everything we've discussed today. Love is a mature cognitive judgment that recognizes the separate individuality of another, responds to their vulnerabilities with proper compassion, and sustains a reciprocal relationship that wills their good as an end in itself. But love has a dark side. Nussbaum identifies three major problems: excessive neediness, partiality, and its link to anger and hatred. Because we are limited beings, we need others for our own happiness. When they don't fulfill those needs or when they exert their separateness, we feel a primitive shame at our own lack of control. This shame often turns into anger. We lash out because we cannot handle the fact that we are not omnipotent. Nussbaum's pillars are the tools we use to navigate this dark side. They help us see that our needs are common to all, not a reason to dominate others. Finally, what about the other things we say we love? If mature love requires a separate agency, does that mean we can't love sports, pizza, our pets, or even truth, beauty, and goodness itself? To resolve this, we have to reject a very famous philosophical metaphor, Plato's ladder of ascent. In the Platonic tradition, we are taught to use unique human beings as mere stepping stones, climbing away from a beautiful body up to beautiful souls, and finally leaving them behind to reach a cold, abstract sea of beauty. But Nussbaum and the Aristotelian tradition offer a profound cautionary note. If our love for the good becomes so abstract that it climbs away from the messy, vulnerable human being right in front of us, it ceases to be ethically productive. Instead of a one-way ladder, we should picture what I call the rose window of love. Imagine a grand cathedral's stained glass window. The pure, transcendent light of truth, beauty, and goodness streams down from above, but it remains invisible and abstract until it strikes the glass. It is the unique, varied, and specific panes of the window, the actual particular human beings in our lives, that refract that divine light into brilliant, visible color. It is a bidirectional illumination. We look through the person to see the transcendent good, but we look at the person to realize that the good is nothing without them. For Nussbaum, truth and beauty are most intelligently loved when we see them alive and instantiated in unique, separate individuals.
This is exactly where St. Thomas Aquinas adds a necessary layer of clarity to help us sort out our everyday vocabulary. He distinguishes between two precise ways of loving. First, there's the love of concupiscence. This isn't a bad thing. It simply means loving something for the sake of another, usually yourself. It is self-love. When you say, I love this pizza, or I love my favorite sports team, you are willing a good, the taste, the nutrition, or the psychological thrill of victory, to yourself. You love the object as a means to your own satisfaction. But then, Aquinas gives us the love of friendship. This is loving a being simply for its own sake. Crucially, this requires a rational agency that can receive your goodwill and reflect it back. You cannot have a true friendship with a slice of pizza or a basketball because they cannot look back at you and will your good in return. What about pets? Nussbaum would likely say yes, animals have agency, they have goals, and they feel pain. We can share a genuinely reciprocal, subtle interplay with them.
But for sports, art, or personal belongings, the line is precise. We absolutely value these things, and Aquinas even argued that play and games are a virtuous necessity for the soul's rest. But mature love is a different category altogether. It is reserved exclusively for those who can participate in true reciprocity. We honor truth, beauty, and goodness as the highest ends, but we exercise our most intelligent love when we recognize those divine qualities traveling down, refracting through the rose window, and lighting up the unique, vulnerable, separate individual right in front of us.
Love isn't just a feeling that happens to you like a bout of the flu. It's a skill. It's an exercise of the intellect that can be subject to improvement. It's a judgment you make every single day. And as Nussbaum shows us, it is perhaps the most important form of intelligence we will ever develop. Thanks for watching. If you want more deep dive into the Neo-Aristotelian worldview and into the great books, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments, do you agree that love is a form of judgment? Or is that too cold of you for such a warm emotion? I'll see you in the next deep dive. Until then, keep seeking truth, goodness, and beauty.